When a beacon of hope crashes into a universe built from pure despair, even gods can bleed. The air is thick with corruption, feeding on his light, twisting his strength into something unrecognizable. In this realm where mercy is weakness and rage is salvation, his symbol begins to burn with hellfire instead of sunlight. What happens when the Man of Steel discovers that sometimes, to save worlds, you must become what you've always fought against? The dimensional rupture tore through Metropolis like a wound in reality itself. Superman hovered above the chaos, his cape billowing in the unnatural winds as the sky fractured with crimson light. Scientists at Star Labs had detected the anomaly hours earlier. An unknown energy signature, unstable and growing, threatening to consume his adopted world. Not magic, not Kryptonian, not even of this universe. Something else. Something ancient. Evacuate the area. Now. His voice carried over the din, firm but controlled. The evacuation was nearly complete, but the rupture was expanding faster than predicted. Red lightning arced between buildings, scoring black lines across steel and glass. The air smelled of copper and ozone. Clark understood the physics of dimensional breaches from his encounters with the Justice League, but this was different. This had purpose. This was reaching for him. The tear in space widened, its edges pulsing with symbols that burned the eye. Geometric patterns that should not exist in 3 dimensions, glyphing themselves into reality. Superman flew closer, scanning the anomaly with every spectrum of vision he possessed. Deep within the Crimson Maw, something moved, something massive. The Man of Steel narrowed his eyes, focusing his supervision beyond the veil. What he saw made no sense. A vast landscape of fire and stone, titanic architecture that defied reason, stretching into skies the color of blood. And armies, countless forms moving across blasted plains toward the rupture, toward Earth. "John, do you copy?" Static answered his Justice League communicator. The rupture was blocking all signals. Superman was alone, and whatever waited on the other side was coming. The decision formed with crystal clarity. If he could not close the breach from this side, he would have to enter it and seal it from within. Just long enough to understand what they faced. Just long enough to stop it. Clark Kent took one last look at his city, the people he had sworn to protect. Then he accelerated, his form becoming a blue and red streak as he pierced the dimensional wound like a bullet through flesh. The universe screamed around him. Superman felt his cells burning, his consciousness stretching across planes of existence never meant for mortal perception. For a terrible moment, he was everywhere and nowhere, his very being dissected and examined by cold, calculating intelligences. Then, mercifully, reality solidified. He crashed into a landscape of nightmare. The impact crater spread beneath him. As he rose to his feet, dust the color of rust settling around his shoulders. The sky above was wrong. No sun, no stars. Just a churning canvas of red and black, punctuated by distant flashes of energy that might have been lightning or something far worse. The air was hot and acrid, like breathing through scorched metal. "Where am I?" Superman spoke to himself, his voice small against the vastness of this alien hell. His super hearing detected distant sounds, mechanical grinding, bestial howls, the unmistakable staccato of gunfire, and underneath it all, a constant, almost subliminal hum that he felt more than heard, resonating with something deep in his Kryptonian physiology, his powers. Something felt wrong. The absence of sunlight should have weakened him, yet he felt a different energy suffusing his cells. Something invasive and potent, crawling beneath his skin like liquid fire. This realm fed him power, but it was corrupt, tainted, not the clean solar radiation of Earth's yellow sun, but something ancient and malevolent. A tower rose in the distance, a monolithic spire of bone and metal that seemed to pierce the roiling heavens. From its summit, a beam of energy pulsed upward, feeding the storm clouds above. The rupture, it had to be connected to whatever was happening there. Superman launched himself skyward, the unfamiliar energy propelling him forward with alarming speed. He flew over a landscape straight from Dante's vision of hell. Vast canyons of magma cut through plains of obsidian glass. Cyclopean structures of alien design dotted the horizon, their purposes inscrutable and obscene. But most disturbing were the facilities that appeared almost human in design. Industrial complexes with Earth-language signage, now overrun and corrupted, their steel frameworks twisted into unnatural configurations like torture victims frozen in their final agony. UAC. The letters appeared on shattered barriers and fallen signs. United Aerospace Corporation, an Earth company, here in this nightmare realm. Understanding began to dawn on Superman. This was not merely another dimension. This was some version of humanity's future, one where mankind had reached too far and awakened something best left sleeping. His flight path took him over what appeared to be a battlefield. Human bodies in armored suits lay scattered across a blasted plain, their forms rent and torn, and moving among them, collecting the dead, were things that defied comprehension. Twisted parodies of life, some bearing vestigial human features corrupted beyond recognition, others entirely alien. Demons, no other word fit. Superman had faced monsters before, but these creatures exuded an aura of pure malevolence that struck at something primal in his soul. One massive horned entity looked up, its eyes burning with recognition as it spotted the Kryptonian overhead. It raised a clawed hand, and from its palm erupted a stream of energy the color of congealed blood. Superman barely had time to react as the projectile struck him with the force of a nuclear blast. The impact sent him tumbling through the air. Pain lanced through his body, real pain of a kind he seldom experienced under Earth's yellow sun. The corrupted energy of this realm might feed his powers, but it also made him vulnerable in ways he was not accustomed to. He stabilized his flight and turned to face his attacker, heat building behind his eyes. "I don't want to fight you," Superman called out, his voice carrying across the hellish landscape. "I'm only here to close the breach to my world." The Demon Lord responded with a guttural laugh that echoed from a dozen misshapen mouths across its torso. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Superman's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "The breach was made for you, Kryptonian. The last sun. The one who burns with the light of a dead world. We have waited. We have prepared. Your coming was foretold." The creature launched itself into the air with surprising agility for its massive bulk. Superman met it halfway, his fist connecting with its jaw in a thunderclap of displaced air. The force should have shattered mountains, but the demon merely staggered backward, black ichor leaking from its ruined mouth as it smiled with too many teeth. "Your strength feeds us, your hope taints us. But we will break you, remake you, and the realm of mankind will fall as this one did." It attacked again, this time joined by a swarm of lesser demons that converged from all directions. Superman became a blur of motion, his fists and heat vision cutting through the horde. But for every demon he struck down, two more took its place. They did not fight like animals or even intelligent opponents. They fought like a virus, overwhelming through sheer numbers, each willing to be destroyed if it meant wearing him down by increments. Superman felt the strange energy inside him building to dangerous levels. His heat vision flared beyond his control, carving molten trenches across the battlefield. His super breath became a hurricane, scattering demonic forms like leaves. But the power was becoming harder to direct, burning through his restraint. These creatures knew what they were doing. They were not trying to kill him. They were trying to provoke him, to make him lose control of whatever energy was building inside his Kryptonian cells. With a final burst of strength, Superman broke free of the demonic swarm, accelerating straight upward toward the wound in the sky. If he could reach the tower, find the source of the breach, he could end this before whatever was happening to his powers reached critical mass. The Demon Lord watched him flee, its ruined face twisting into a grimace that might have been satisfaction. "Run, Kryptonian. It changes nothing. The Slayer comes." Superman did not hear the warning as he streaked toward the distant tower, a sonic boom trailing in his wake. Nor did he notice the silent figure watching from the summit of a ruined UAC facility. A figure in green armor, scarred by countless battles, holding a weapon of impossible design. The Doomslayer tracked the Man of Steel's flight path with cold calculation, then turned toward his own destination. The collision of legends had begun. The only question was how many worlds would burn before it ended. The spire loomed larger as Superman approached, its true scale becoming apparent. What had seemed a tower was in fact a structure the size of a mountain, a grotesque amalgamation of technology and organic matter that pulsed with unholy life. Its surface was a maze of conduits and arteries pumping a glowing red substance that Superman now recognized as the same energy infecting his cells. Argent energy. The knowledge came to him unbidden, as if the realm itself was feeding information directly into his consciousness. Landing on a massive terrace jutting from the tower's face, Superman found himself in what appeared to be a control center of sorts. Human equipment, UAC logos, but repurposed and corrupted. The interfaces were smeared with dried blood and inscribed with symbols that hurt to look upon. Monitors displayed incomprehensible data streams, punctuated by occasional images of Earth. His Earth. Different cities, different entry points, all potential invasion sites. This stops now. Superman approached the central console, his hands moving over alien controls with growing certainty, more knowledge flooding his mind, unwanted but useful. The breach was controlled from here. It could be closed from here. But the process would trigger a cascading collapse that would destroy the tower and likely everything within a 100-mile radius. As his fingers hovered over the final sequence, a voice spoke. Human, female, emerging from the facility's announcement system. The Kryptonian asset has reached the Argent Processing Center. Commencing integration protocol. The floor beneath Superman suddenly glowed with the same sigils he had seen in the dimensional breach. Before he could react, pillars of energy erupted around him, forming a cage of pure argent. The corrupted power that had been building in his cells resonated with the field, paralyzing him in place. Asset secured. Preparing for essence extraction. The ceiling above retracted, revealing a massive apparatus. A corruption of Kryptonian design fused with technology that seemed both ancient and futuristic. Superman recognized elements from the Phantom Zone projector, somehow obtained and perverted by the entities controlling this realm. It lowered toward him, alignment beams fixing on his chest, on the symbol of the House of El. S-caliber Argent infusion commencing in 3, 2, 1. The beam struck Superman with apocalyptic force. Pure Argent energy, refined and concentrated, drove into his cells like a trillion white-hot needles. His back arched in agony, a scream tearing from his throat as the power burned through every molecule of his being. It was no mere attack. This was a calculated transformation. They were trying to rewrite him from within, to corrupt the solar energy that powered him and replace it with something profane. Inside the maelstrom of pain, Superman fought, not with fists or heat vision, but with the pure force of will that had defined his life. The very essence that made Clark Kent who he was, that had survived the destruction of Krypton and found a home on a distant blue world. The same will that had resisted the corruption of countless villains who had tried to break or control him. Integration at 20%, resistance higher than anticipated. The voice sounded concerned now. Warning klaxons began to sound throughout the facility. On monitoring stations, warning indicators flashed as power levels spiked beyond safety parameters. The Argent beam intensified, pouring more corrupted energy into Superman's cells. 40%, 60%. The chamber itself began to crack under the strain, hairline, fractures spreading across walls reinforced to withstand dimensional collapse. Emergency shutdown, asset corruption, event imminent. Too late, something broke within Superman. Not his will, but the dam holding back the argent energy that had been forced into him. His eyes snapped open, no longer blue, no longer even red with heat vision. They blazed with pure argent light. His skin cracked along his veins, the same light pouring from within. "I am Kal-El, son of Krypton." His voice resonated with harmonics that shattered the remaining monitoring equipment. "Last son of a dead world, champion of Earth, and you cannot have me." The argent containment field shattered like glass as Superman raised his arms. The energy that had been meant to corrupt him now answered to his will, channeled through Kryptonian physiology never designed for such power. The extraction apparatus above him crumpled, crushed by an invisible force as Superman rose into the air. His body still burned with argent energy, but now it was his to command, however temporarily. With a gesture, he reached toward the breach controls, the sequence completing itself without physical contact. Alarms screamed throughout the facility as the dimensional tear began its collapse sequence. Superman turned his gaze upward, toward the exit, toward the sky where the wound between worlds was already beginning to shrink. He launched himself upward, tearing through level after level of the demonic spire, the structure beginning to collapse around him. As he burst from the summit into the open air, the first shockwave of the breach collapse hit. The very fabric of this hellish dimension shuddered, mountains of bone and valleys of fire rippling like disturbed water. Superman accelerated toward the closing breach, his form a comet of blue, red, and argent light. The passage home was sealing itself, faster than even his calculations had predicted. With every ounce of speed he possessed, he drove himself upward, the corrupted power in his veins beginning to burn out, his true strength returning but fading without solar replenishment. The dimensional tear shrank to a pinpoint just as he reached it. Too late. He was trapped in this hell. Superman hovered, the last embers of argent energy flickering across his skin as the breach winked out of existence. Earth was safe, for now, the invasion thwarted. But the cost had been his own freedom. As the Kryptonian descended back toward the ruined landscape, his enhanced hearing picked up a new sound, rhythmic, purposeful, bootsteps coming toward him across the obsidian plain. A single figure approached through the swirling dust and ash, armored in green, scarred by countless battles, radiating an aura of such focused violence that even Superman felt a momentary chill. In one hand, the figure held a weapon of impossible design. In the other, a helmet removed to reveal a human face hardened by wars beyond comprehension. The Doomslayer had arrived to meet the new intruder in his endless crusade, and he was not alone. Behind him marched a contingent of humans in battle armor, survivors in this realm of death. They moved with precision and purpose, weapons trained on the floating Kryptonian. "Stand down," a female voice called out, amplified by her combat suit. "We have containment fields if necessary." Superman lowered himself to the ground, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. The last traces of argent energy dissipated from his system, leaving him weakened but clear-headed. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "My name is Kal-El. On Earth, they call me Superman." The woman stepped forward, her helmet retracting to reveal a face marked by both intelligence and hardened resolve. "Doctor, Elena Voss, UAC Special Projects Division, what's left of it, and this," she gestured to the silent warrior at her side, "is the Doomslayer. The only reason any of us are still alive." Superman studied the armored figure with newfound respect. Even without his powers at full strength, he could sense something extraordinary about this human. An implacable will that matched his own, forged in a crucible of endless war. The Slayer returned his gaze, emotionless, assessing, his grip on his weapon never wavering. "The breach is closed," Superman explained, "at least the one leading to my Earth. I destroyed the control center, but from what I saw, they're planning more incursions, different targets, different dimensions." Dr. Voss nodded grimly. "Hell finds a way. Always. We've been fighting this war for decades, In every dimension they touch, the pattern is the same: infiltration, corruption, invasion, consumption. Then we need to stop them permanently. Not just close the breaches, but end whatever is controlling this. Superman looked back toward the distant ruins of the Argent Tower, still collapsing in slow motion. I may be trapped here, but I won't stand by while these creatures threaten innocent worlds. The Doomslayer's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his stance. A fractional relaxation, perhaps, or a recognition of kindred purpose. He turned to Dr. Voss and nodded once, a gesture apparently loaded with meaning. "He wants to know what they did to you in there," Voss translated. "The Argent exposure, it affects everyone differently. Most humans it just kills. Some it transforms into the creatures you've seen. A rare few can harness it, control it." Superman looked down at his hands, remembering the power that had coursed through him. "They tried to corrupt me with it. To use my connection to solar energy as a conduit, it didn't work the way they expected." "It never does," Voss said with a bitter smile. "Hell's generals are brilliant strategists, but they underestimate human will, or in your case, Kryptonian will. The Argent is still in you, dormant now, but it will resurface when you need it, or when it decides you need it." The Slayer stepped forward, suddenly, closing the distance between himself and Superman. Before anyone could react, he placed a gauntleted hand on Superman's chest, directly over the S-shield. A jolt of energy passed between them, painful but clarifying. Images flashed through Superman's mind. Countless battlefields, endless hordes of demons. A green-armored figure cutting through them with methodical fury. Centuries of war, millennia, the weight of a crusade that had no end. The Slayer removed his hand and turned away, walking back toward a vehicle that resembled a militarized rover. The message was clear without words. "Show me. Prove your worth. Join the war or be considered part of the enemy." Dr. Voss shook her head slightly. "He doesn't trust easily. None of us do. Not anymore. But we need all the help we can get." She gestured for Superman to follow. "We have a forward base in what used to be a UAC research station, hardened against demonic incursion. We can get you patched up, briefed on what we're facing." Superman nodded, falling into step beside her as they followed the Slayer toward the waiting vehicles. "How long has this been going on?" "This war?" Voss laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "In this dimension? About 70 years since the first UAC expedition breached Hell. In terms of the Slayer?" She glanced ahead at the green-armored figure. "Time works differently for him. The records we've pieced together suggest he's been fighting this war across dimensions and eons. Some of the oldest texts call him the Doom Slayer, others the Hell Walker. To the demons, he is simply the one they fear." As they approached the rover, a tremor shook the landscape. In the distance, where the Argent Tower had stood, a new eruption pierced the crimson sky. A pillar of pure energy that split the heavens. "That's not possible," Voss breathed. "The Argent Spire was the only one on this continent. If they've activated another so quickly." The Slayer had already turned, weapon raised, watching the distant phenomenon with the eyes of a predator that had spotted prey. Without waiting for the others, he began moving toward the new threat, his purpose absolute. Superman felt a strange pull toward the energy pillar, a resonance with whatever Argent remained in his system. "They're calling something, or someone." "Doctor." Voss grabbed his arm, her expression urgent. "Listen to me. Whatever connection you felt to the Argent, whatever power it gave you, don't trust it. It's not just energy. It's consciousness, will, the essence of hell itself, refined into a weapon." "I understand," Superman said, gently removing her hand. "But I can't ignore this. Not if I have the power to help." He looked toward the Slayer, already a distant figure moving with implacable purpose toward the new threat. "Is he always like this? Rushing alone into battle?" "Always," Voss confirmed. "For him, there is only the path forward, the next kill, the next battle, demons destroyed by the millions, and still he hunts. We follow when we can, clean up what we must, but the crusade is his alone. Superman watched the solitary warrior with a mixture of respect and concern. Such single-minded purpose was both admirable and dangerous. He had seen similar dedication lead good men down dark paths. "Not anymore," he said. With a burst of his returning strength, Superman launched himself into the air. Not with his full power, not in this sunless realm, but enough to follow the Doomslayer toward whatever new horror hell had unleashed. Behind him, he heard Voss shouting commands to her team, mobilizing their meager forces to follow. The Man of Steel and the Doomslayer, champions of different worlds, united by circumstance against a common enemy. As Superman flew over the blasted landscape, he couldn't help but wonder if his presence in this dimension was truly an accident or part of some larger design. The demons had expected him, prepared for him, and now a new power was rising, drawn, perhaps by his arrival. Whatever awaited them at the new Argent Spire, Superman knew one thing with certainty. This hell had never faced the combined might of Krypton and Earth before, and despite the horror of this realm, despite the corruption that had tried to claim him, he felt something stir within his chest. Not fear, not despair, hope. The one force that hell could never truly comprehend, the one weapon it could never counter, hope, and the will to fight for those who had none left. The new Argent Spire rose from the broken landscape like a monument to corruption. Unlike the technological hybrid Superman had destroyed, this structure appeared almost entirely organic. A tower of fused bone and sinew that pulsed with unholy life, its surface crawling with demonic forms that seemed as much a part of the structure as separate entities. At its summit, the pillar of energy continued to pour into the crimson sky, tearing a new wound in reality. Superman landed atop a ridge overlooking the abomination, his Kryptonian vision piercing the swirling energy to see what lay within. A portal, but not to Earth, to somewhere else, somewhere ancient. And through it poured creatures unlike any he had seen thus far. Taller, more regal in their corruption, bearing artifacts of power that hummed with malevolent purpose. The Doomslayer arrived moments later, climbing the ridge with inhuman stamina. He crouched beside Superman, weapon ready, his face once again concealed behind his helmet. Though no words passed between them, an understanding formed. Both warriors recognized an escalation when they saw one. Whatever was emerging from that portal represented a higher order of threat. Through the maelstrom of Argent energy, a single figure descended from the portal, towering over its followers, its form a perfect melding of angelic and demonic aspects. Great wings of bone and metal spread from its back, crackling with power. Its face, if it could be called such, was a mask of gold that shifted between expressions of benevolence and cruelty with each passing moment. When it spoke, the voice resonated directly in the minds of all who heard it. "I am Samur, once seraph of the Maker realm, now ascended through the grace of the dark energies. The breach between worlds has drawn my attention. The one who should not be here has arrived." Its gaze fixed directly on Superman, golden mask reshaping into something resembling a smile. "Last son of Krypton, your presence was unforeseen by the lower hierarchies, but not by those of us who watch the tapestry of dimensions. You represent an anomaly, a power that does not belong in the natural order of hell and its conquests." The Slayer raised his weapon, but Samur's attention remained fixed on Superman. "The Argent that now mingles with your Kryptonian cells is but a fraction of what you could wield. Your solar-based physiology is uniquely suited to channel the primal energies of creation. Join us, son of El, and we shall restore your lost world. Krypton reborn through Argent mastery. Your people restored. Your heritage no longer a memory, but a living civilization once more." Superman felt the Argent energy within him stir at these words, responding to Samur's call. Images flashed through his mind. Krypton's crystalline spires rising once more, his parents, Jor-El and Lara, alive again. an entire civilization saved from extinction. The loneliness that had shadowed his entire life finally banished. For one dangerous moment, desire clouded his judgment. Then clarity returned, sharp as Kryptonian crystal. This was the corruption working within him, exploiting his deepest wounds. The being before him offered not salvation but desecration, not life but a mockery of it. "Krypton is gone," Superman said, his voice steady despite the pain these words still brought him. "Its people live on through me and through the values they instilled. Values that stand in direct opposition to everything you represent." Samur's mask shifted to an expression of cold disdain. "Values? How quaint. The Kryptonian speaks of morality while his cells already burn with argent fire. You have tasted our power, son of El. You will hunger for more." The Doomslayer had heard enough. With a speed that surprised even Superman, he raised a weapon that hummed with modified argent energy and fired directly at the hovering Seraph. The blast should have vaporized any normal being, but Samur merely gestured, and the energy dissipated before reaching him. The Hellwalker, always so predictable in his rage. "Did you think I would face you unprepared?" Samur raised a hand, and the ground beneath the Slayer glowed with sigils of containment. Ancient symbols, older than the Hell dimension itself, designed specifically to bind the Doomslayer's unique energies. The Slayer struggled against the binding force, his armor's systems overloading as they fought to counter the attack. For the first time, Superman saw something like concern in the human's body language. These were no ordinary restraints. They were drawing on the very essence that powered the Praetor suit, turning the Slayer's own energy against him. Without hesitation, Superman launched himself towards Samur, a blur of motion too fast for even the demonic forces to track. His fist connected with the golden mask, the impact sending a shockwave across the hellscape that flattened lesser demons for miles around. Samur reeled backward, genuinely surprised by the Kryptonian's speed and strength, even in this sunless realm. "The Argent sustains you better than expected," Samur acknowledged, his mask cracking along one edge. "Perhaps there is more of hell in you than you care to admit, Kal-El." Superman pressed his advantage, closing again with the fallen Seraph, but this time Samur was prepared. A blast of concentrated Argent energy erupted from his palms, catching Superman mid-flight and sending him crashing through several rock formations before he could stabilize. The pain was intense, far worse than it should have been. The Argent within him was responding to Samur's attack, amplifying the damage rather than protecting him. Superman fought through the agony, launching himself skyward to gain perspective on the battlefield. Below, the Doomslayer had broken free of the binding sigils through sheer force of will, his armor smoking but his determination unbroken. He charged towards Samur's position, switching to a different weapon that pulsed with a blue energy distinctly different from the Argent's red glow. "The Crucible," Samur's voice echoed with something like amusement. "Impressive that you've reclaimed it, but ultimately futile." The Slayer's attack was met with a barrier of pure energy that stopped his advance cold. From Samur's outstretched hand, tendrils of corrupted power lashed out, wrapping around the Slayer's armor, seeking weaknesses, points of entry. The human warrior fought with everything he had, but even his legendary resilience was being tested. Superman dove back into the fray, heat building behind his eyes. The beam that erupted was not the familiar red of his heat vision, but a hybrid energy, solar power infused with Argent. It cut through Samur's barrier like it wasn't there, striking the fallen Seraph directly in the chest. Samur screamed, a sound that tore through the minds of all who heard it. The golden mask shattered completely, revealing a face both beautiful and horrific, a visage caught between angelic perfection and demonic corruption. "You dare," Samur hissed, genuine pain and rage in his voice. "You damage that which cannot be damaged. You resist that which cannot be resisted." The fallen Seraph raised both hands toward the portal above, drawing more power directly from whatever lay beyond. His form began to grow, expand, transcending physical limitations as raw dimensional energy poured into him. The very air around them shimmered with heat distortion as reality itself protested against what was occurring. "Enough games," Samur's voice boomed across the hellscape, now emanating from a form 3 times its original size. "You will both serve, or you will both be unmade and remade as loyal thralls." A wave of pure force erupted outward, catching both Superman and the Doomslayer before either could react. Superman felt his cells burning, the Argent within him suddenly activated beyond his control. The Slayer's armor sparked and failed in sections, emergency protocols struggling to compensate. Through the haze of pain, Superman saw Dr. Voss and her team arriving at the perimeter, setting up what appeared to be a massive energy weapon salvaged from UAC technology. They worked with desperate speed, calibrating the device as Samur's attention remained fixed on his 2 primary opponents. "We need to buy them time," Superman gasped, forcing himself back to his feet despite the agony racking his body. The Slayer was already up, retrieving his dropped weapon, with mechanical efficiency despite the damage to his systems. Samur began a chant in a language that hurt the mind, syllables that existed in dimensions beyond normal comprehension. The portal above widened further, and through it came the first glimpses of something vast and terrible. A titanic form that dwelled in the spaces between dimensions, drawn by Samur's call. The icon of corruption itself, answering its servant summons. Superman looked to the Slayer, an unspoken question passing between them. "How do we stop this?" The human warrior's response was characteristically direct. He raised his weapon, indicating Samur, then pointed to the expanding portal. The message was clear. "Stop, Samur. Close the portal. At any cost." Drawing on reserves of strength he hadn't known he possessed, Superman launched himself directly at the transformed Seraph, not to attack, but to grapple, to hold. As his arms locked around Samur's now massive form, he shouted to the Slayer, "Now, whatever you're going to do it now." The Doomslayer did not hesitate. With practiced precision, he armed his most devastating weapon, one clearly designed for a single purpose. The BFG 9000, its core pulsing with a sickly green light as its circuits channeled a controlled burst of Argent energy modified to target demonic signatures. Samur struggled against Superman's grip, his power immense but the Kryptonian's determination greater. "You cannot stop what comes, son of El," the Dark Lord rises. "All dimensions will burn." "Not today," Superman replied, his eyes beginning to glow with that same hybrid energy. "And not my world." The Slayer fired. The BFG's projectile screamed toward them, a miniature sun of concentrated anti-demonic energy. In the split second before impact, Superman released his hold on Samur and attempted to clear the blast radius. Too slow. The Argent corruption within him had made him a target as well. The explosion tore through both Superman and Samur, a cataclysmic release of energy that momentarily outshone even the portal above. Superman felt his consciousness fading, darkness closing in at the edges of his vision. The last thing he saw was Samur's form disintegrating, the fallen Seraph's final scream cut short as the BFG's energy consumed him utterly. Then nothing. Consciousness returned slowly, painfully. Superman opened his eyes to find himself in what appeared to be a medical facility, or what remained of one. UAC logos adorned the walls, now partially covered with handwritten notes and arcane symbols of protection. Dr. Voss stood over him, monitoring equipment jury-rigged to track his vital signs. "Welcome back," she said, relief evident in her voice. "We weren't sure you'd make it. The BFG was never designed to be used on anything with your particular energy signature." Superman tried to sit up, wincing at the deep ache that permeated his entire body. "The Slayer?" "Already back in the field," Voss replied with a slight shake of her head. "Barely. Waited for his suit's systems to reboot before he was hunting again. The blast destroyed Samur and collapsed the portal, but not before something came through. Something big." "I need to help him," Superman said, forcing himself to his feet despite Voss's protests. Whatever came through that portal, it's my responsibility too. I'm part of this war now." Voss studied him for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Your cellular structure is stabilizing, but the Argent exposure has permanently altered your physiology. You're not what you were before." Superman looked down at his hands, noting the faint red glow that traced his veins when he concentrated. "No, I'm not. But I'm still me where it counts. Still Kal-El, still Superman." The tracking system shows the Slayer heading toward the ruins of what used to be New Washington Colony. "If this new entity is where we think it is, that's where you'll find him." Voss handed Superman a communications device. "Take this. It's tuned to our emergency frequency. If things go sideways, call. What's left of our forces will respond." Superman accepted the device with a nod of thanks. "The people here, the survivors, they fight despite everything they've lost, despite knowing the odds." "What else would we do?" Voss asked simply. "Surrender? Become part of this?" She gestured to the hellscape visible through a reinforced window. "Humanity endures. Even here. Even now." Those words stayed with Superman as he launched himself into the air once more, his powers diminished but returning. The absence of sunlight remained a constant handicap, but the Argent energy, now integrated into his cells, provided a substitute power source, albeit one that came with its own risks. He flew across the blighted landscape toward the coordinates Voss had provided. Below, the terrain grew increasingly disturbing, no longer merely hellish, but something worse. Reality itself seemed to be breaking down, matter and energy reconfiguring according to alien laws of physics. Space stretched and compressed in nauseating patterns, forcing Superman to adjust his flight path constantly. The ruins of New Washington Colony appeared on the horizon, but they were no longer ruins in any conventional sense. The former human settlement had been transformed into something that defied description. A cathedral of corruption, its architecture both biological and mechanical, growing and shifting even as Superman approached. And at its center, a presence so vast it distorted the very fabric of this already twisted dimension. Superman descended toward the periphery of the transformed colony, landing atop what had once been a defensive wall. The scene below froze his blood. Thousands of demonic entities, from the smallest imps to massive cybernetically enhanced monstrosities, all prostrated in worship, and the object of their devotion was a being that barely fit within the confines of physical reality. The Dark Lord. The icon of sin. Names whispered, in the most forbidden texts of countless dimensions. A titan of such immense power that its mere presence corrupted reality around it. Its form was vaguely humanoid but constructed from the essence of hell itself, Argent energy made flesh, crowned with horns that tore at the crimson sky. And moving through the sea of worshipping demons, a single green-armored figure, the Doomslayer, cutting a path directly toward the Colossus, leaving destruction in his wake. The demons were so entranced by their master's presence that they barely registered the Slayer's approach until his weapons began to speak, each blast removing another obstacle between him and his target. Superman understood immediately. The Slayer meant to face this god of corruption alone, as he had faced every other horror in his eternal crusade. Brave, but this time potentially suicidal. Even from this distance, Superman could sense the raw power emanating from the Dark Lord. This was no ordinary demon, not even an extraordinary one like Samur. This was hell incarnate. Without hesitation, Superman launched himself into the fray, descending into the mass of demons like a meteor. His fists and heat vision cleared a path parallel to the Slayer's advance, drawing attention away from the human warrior and toward himself. The Doomslayer registered Superman's presence with a slight tilt of his helmet, the closest thing to acknowledgement the Kryptonian had yet received. Together, they carved through the demonic ranks with terrible efficiency, each warrior's style complementing the other. Where the Slayer was precision and calculated violence, Superman was raw power and speed, his Kryptonian abilities amplified by the Argent energy that now coursed through his veins. As they neared the base of the titanic being, the Dark Lord finally took notice of the two warriors cutting through his followers. A sound like tectonic plates grinding together emanated from the Colossus, a laugh that shook the very foundations of the corrupted city. "Slayer," the voice penetrated directly into their minds, bypassing ears entirely. "Finally, you face your destiny, and you bring a new pet." The Kryptonian touched by Argent. How amusing! The Slayer's response was to raise his most powerful weapon and fire directly at the Titan's face. The blast impacted with a thunderous explosion, but when the smoke cleared, the Dark Lord appeared entirely unharmed. With a casual gesture, it swatted the Slayer aside, sending the armored human crashing through several structures before disappearing from sight. "Now you, last son." The Dark Lord's attention fixed on Superman, its gaze like a physical weight. "Show me what power Krypton grants when wedded to Hell's fire." Superman launched himself upward, accelerating to his maximum speed. Fist extended toward the Titan's face. The impact should have shattered mountains, but the Dark Lord merely rocked backward slightly, more surprised than damaged. Impressive. A massive hand closed around Superman, squeezing with force that would have crushed planets. But ultimately futile. You cannot destroy that which creates destruction itself. Pain beyond anything Superman had ever experienced lanced through his body as the Dark Lord's grip tightened. He felt his ribs cracking, his Kryptonian durability enhanced by Argent energy, but still failing against such overwhelming force. In desperation, Superman focused on the Argent energy within him, no longer fighting its influence, but embracing it fully. Power surged through his cells, corrupted but potent, changing him from within. His eyes blazed with unholy light as the S symbol on his chest began to glow with the same energy. The shield of the House of El becoming a conduit for forces never meant to flow through Kryptonian flesh. With a scream that was part pain and part battle cry, Superman exploded outward with pure Argent-enhanced strength. The Dark Lord's grip shattered, fingers of living corruption disintegrating under the force of Superman's release. The Titan staggered backward, genuinely damaged for the first time. "Impossible." The Dark Lord thundered, its form already beginning to regenerate. "The Argent is mine to command. Mine alone." "Not anymore," Superman replied, his voice distorted by the energy coursing through him. He hovered before the Dark Lord, a being of two worlds now, neither fully Kryptonian nor fully corrupted, something new, something unprecedented in all the infinite dimensions of existence. The Titan attacked again, this time with a beam of pure Argent energy from its eyes. Superman met it with his own heat vision, the two forces colliding in a cataclysmic display that lit up the hellish sky. For long moments they remained locked in this contest of wills, neither able to overcome the other. Then movement caught Superman's eye. The Doomslayer, having recovered from the Dark Lord's attack, was scaling the Titan's back, using the protrusions of bone and metal as handholds. In his arms, he carried what appeared to be a massive energy cell, likely salvaged from the UAC weapon Dr. Voss and her team had been calibrating. Understanding dawned on Superman. The Slayer needed him to keep the Dark Lord distracted, to keep its attention fixed forward while the human warrior delivered the killing blow from behind. It was a good plan, the only plan with any hope of success. "Is this all you have?" Superman called out, deliberately goading the Titan. "All the power of hell, and you can't even overcome one last son of a dead world." The Dark Lord roared in fury, intensifying its attack. Superman felt his reserves draining rapidly, the hybrid energy that sustained him burning out under the strain. But he held on, pouring everything he had into the contest, watching from the corner of his eye as the Slayer reached the base of the Titan's skull. With practiced efficiency, the Doomslayer placed the energy cell against a visible weak point where corruption energy flowed into the Dark Lord's brain. He armed the device, the countdown beginning immediately. Then, With no regard for his own safety, he leapt clear, falling hundreds of feet toward the ground below. Superman broke off his attack, diving toward the falling Slayer. The Dark Lord, momentarily confused by this shift in tactics, didn't immediately register the threat attached to its skull. By the time the Titan sensed the energy cell's presence, Superman had already caught the Doomslayer in mid-air and was accelerating away from Ground Zero. The explosion that followed defied comprehension. Not merely a physical detonation, but a dimensional one. The energy cell, modified with whatever technology Dr. Voss's team had developed, created a localized collapse that tore the Dark Lord's consciousness from its physical form. The Titan's body began to disintegrate, vast chunks of corrupted flesh and metal raining down across the landscape as its essence was forcibly returned to whatever realm had spawned it. Superman and the Slayer crashed to Earth nearly a mile away, the shockwave of the Dark Lord's destruction overtaking them despite their speed. They tumbled across broken ground before coming to rest amid the ruins of what had once been a human dwelling. For long moments, neither moved. Then, slowly, the Doomslayer rose to his feet. His armor was severely damaged, systems failing, but the man inside remained unbroken. He looked down at Superman, who lay barely conscious, the hybrid energy that had sustained him now almost completely depleted. To Superman's surprise, the Slayer extended a hand, an offer of assistance, of recognition. After a moment's hesitation, Superman grasped the offered gauntlet, allowing the human warrior to pull him to his feet. No words passed between them. None were needed. In the crucible of battle, they had forged an understanding that transcended speech. Two champions from different worlds, united by a common enemy and a shared willingness to sacrifice everything for what they believed in. In the distance, the corrupted cathedral that had housed the Dark Lord was collapsing in on itself, taking thousands of demons with it. Without their master's presence, the lesser entities fell into disarray, their hive mind fragmented. It wasn't victory, not in any permanent sense. Hell would recover, new leaders would rise. The war would continue, but for now at least, a significant blow had been struck. The Doomslayer gestured toward the horizon, where the UAC forward base would be waiting. Then, without waiting for a response, he began walking, his stride purposeful despite his injuries. The mission was complete, the next already beckoned. Superman followed, his powers greatly diminished but his resolve intact. This wasn't his world, wasn't his war, and yet somehow it had become both. The argent corruption within him was a constant reminder that he was changed, perhaps forever. But the core of who he was remained, Kal-El, Clark Kent, Superman, now with a new purpose in a realm of nightmare. As they crossed the blasted plain toward what passed for safety in this dimension, Superman looked up at the churning sky. Somewhere beyond that crimson veil lay Earth. His Earth, and countless other worlds that had yet to feel Hell's touch. Worlds that might never know how close they had come to sharing this dimension's fate. For them, he would continue to fight, alongside the silent warrior who had made this battle his eternal crusade, for as long as it took, for as long as he had strength. The last son of Krypton and the Doomslayer, champions of light in a universe of shadow, beacons of hope in a realm of despair. The war continued. It always would. But for now, they had won a battle that mattered. And in Hell itself, that was no small victory. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months in the sunless realm of Hell. Superman adapted to his new existence with the same resilience that had defined his life on Earth. The argent energy that had infected his cells became a tool rather than a corruption, carefully harnessed under the guidance of Dr. Voss and her team of survivors. Not a replacement for the solar radiation that had once powered him, but a different kind of strength, one that allowed him to continue fighting in this dimension where no yellow sun would ever shine. The Doomslayer remained a solitary figure, communicating primarily through action rather than words. Yet between missions, between the endless battles against Hell's legions, a kind of understanding developed between him and the Kryptonian. Not friendship in any conventional sense, but a mutual respect born of shared purpose. They were both outsiders in this realm, both driven by codes and convictions that set them apart from even the human survivors who fought alongside them. Under the combined leadership of Superman, the Doomslayer, and Dr. Voss, the remnants of humanity began to coalesce into a more effective resistance. UAC outposts that had once been isolated pockets of survivors were connected through secured transit routes. Technologies salvaged from demonic temples were reverse-engineered into new weapons and defenses. For the first time in generations, Hell's advance was not merely being slowed, but actively pushed back. The demons responded with escalating violence. New forms emerged from the depths of corruption, specifically engineered to counter the tactics of the human resistance and their two champions. Cyber demons with argent shields designed to withstand Superman's heat vision. Hell Knights modified to track the Doomslayer's unique energy signature. Each adaptation met with counter-adaptation in an evolutionary arms race played out across battlefields of bone and fire, and always there were the portals. Dimensional breaches opening to new worlds, new potential conquests for the forces of Hell. Some the Resistance managed to close before invasion forces could be fully deployed. Others required more direct intervention, with Superman and the Slayer leading strike teams through the portals to secure the other side. It was during one such mission that everything changed. The portal had opened in what had once been a UAC Argent processing facility, now a twisted cathedral dedicated to demonic worship. Intelligence suggested it led to a previously untouched Earth, one with technology levels similar to the world Superman had left behind, a prime target for Hell's consumption. The mission parameters were clear. Enter the portal, secure the other side, destroy the corresponding breach control to prevent further incursions. Standard procedure for the specialized task force that had come to be known simply as the Breakers. Superman and the Doomslayer led the advance team, 8 battle-hardened survivors equipped with the best weapons the Resistance could provide. They moved through the corrupted facility with practiced efficiency, eliminating demonic resistance with minimal noise or disruption. The goal was to reach the portal before Hell's generals realized it was under attack, to pass through before they could close it from their side. The chamber housing the dimensional breach was vast, its walls inscribed with symbols that hurt the human mind to perceive directly. The portal itself pulsed with unnatural light, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. Through it, indistinct shapes could be seen moving. A city skyline, vehicles, human figures going about their lives, unaware of the horror preparing to emerge into their world. Dr. Voss's voice came through their comms, tense but controlled. Portal stability at 87% and holding. Demonic signatures on the other side are minimal, likely only scout forces so far. You have a clear window but move fast. Our sensors detect a major energy buildup deeper in the facility. Something big is coming. The Doomslayer was already moving, checking his weapons one final time before approaching the portal's edge. Superman followed, the argent energy within him resonating with the dimensional breach, a sensation he had come to recognize from previous missions. "We'll secure the other side," Superman confirmed over the comm. "Have the second wave ready to move on our signal." "Copy that," Voss replied. "And Cal, be careful. Our readings on this portal are showing some anomalies. The destination may not be exactly what we think." Superman acknowledged the warning as he and the Slayer positioned themselves at the threshold of the breach. The human warriors formed up behind them, weapons ready. With a silent count of 3, they stepped through the shimmering barrier between dimensions. The transition was disorienting, as always. A moment of existence in non-space, where physical laws broke down and reformed. Then solid ground beneath their feet, air in their lungs, and a sky above that was not the churning red of hell, but clear blue, earth blue. They had merged in what appeared to be a park, the portal manifesting between a stand of trees that partially concealed their arrival. In the distance, a city skyline rose against the horizon, familiar yet not. Buildings Superman recognized, but in different configurations, with different designs. Not his Earth then, but close, a parallel, and above it all, a yellow sun. Superman felt it immediately, like a shock to his system. Pure solar radiation washing over his cells, reawakening the true source of his power. The strength that had defined him for so many years, untainted by argent corruption. It flooded back in a rush that nearly overwhelmed his senses, his body eagerly absorbing the energy it had been starved of for so long. The Doomslayer noticed the change immediately, his helmet turning toward Superman as the Kryptonian began to literally glow with renewed power. For the first time, Superman saw something like surprise in the human warrior's body language. "It's the sun," Superman explained, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "My true power source. Here, under a yellow sun, I'm..." He trailed off, searching for words to describe the transformation occurring within him. His cells purging the argent corruption, replacing it with clean solar energy. His true self, re-emerging from beneath months of adaptation and compromise. The moment of revelation was cut short by the sound of screams from the direction of the city. The advance team's sensors immediately picked up demonic energy signatures. The Scout Force doctor, Voss, had detected, already beginning their work. "We need to move," Superman said, his resolve hardening. "Contain the demonic presence before it can spread. Establish a perimeter around the portal entry point. I'll deal with whatever's happening in the city." The Doomslayer gave a curt nod, already directing the human warriors into defensive positions around the portal. He understood the tactical advantage of Superman's restored powers, the need to deploy them where they would be most effective. Superman launched himself skyward, the sensation like breaking free of chains he hadn't fully realized he was wearing. Under the yellow sun, his flight was effortless, his speed exponentially greater than what he had been capable of in Hell's sunless realm. He soared toward the source of the disturbance, his supervision activating automatically to assess the threat. What he saw turned his blood cold. In the heart of the city's financial district, a smaller portal had opened. Through it poured demonic entities, but not the standard invasion force Superman had expected. These were corrupted humans, UAC personnel transformed by argent exposure, their bodies and minds twisted into mockeries of their former selves. Leading them was a figure Superman recognized with shock and horror. A demonically enhanced Dr. Samuel Hayden, once director of the UAC's Mars facility according to the records they had recovered, now a towering cybernetic monstrosity infused with argent energy. The corrupted Hayden directed his forces with calculated precision, targeting infrastructure and communication centers rather than engaging in random slaughter. This was not a standard incursion. This was a coordinated takeover, designed to cripple this Earth's ability to respond before most of its population even realized they were under attack. Superman descended into the heart of the chaos, landing with enough force to crater the concrete beneath him. The corrupted UAC forces turned as one, their altered senses immediately detecting the Kryptonian's presence. Hayden's mechanical face could not express emotion, but the tilt of his head conveyed clear surprise. The Kryptonian, Hayden's voice was a metallic approximation of human speech, distorted by argent corruption. "You are not supposed to be here. This incursion was calculated specifically to avoid both you and the Slayer." "Miscalculation," Superman replied simply. Then he moved. Under the yellow sun, with his powers fully restored, the battle was no contest. Superman tore through the corrupted UAC forces with a speed and strength that would have been impossible in Hell's dimension. Heat vision at full capacity vaporized demonic weapons. Super breath at hurricane force scattered the lighter entities. Fists moving faster than human eyes could track dismantled the heavier units with surgical precision. Hayden recognized the hopelessness of the engagement almost immediately. The cybernetic entity began retreating toward the smaller portal, abandoning his forces without hesitation. Superman intercepted him, moving faster than even Hayden's enhanced systems could track, cutting off his escape route. "This world is under my protection now," Superman declared, hovering between Hayden and the portal. "Close the breach, return to hell, or be destroyed." Hayden's mechanical laugh echoed metallically across the battlefield. "Protection? You don't even know what world this is. Kryptonian, look around you, observe. Then tell me if this Earth deserves your noble sacrifice." Against his better judgment, Superman allowed his attention to wander briefly from Hayden to the city around them. What he saw made him hesitate. UAC logos, prominently displayed on buildings that should have housed other corporations. Government vehicles bearing insignias that blended traditional American symbols with occult sigils. And on the largest skyscraper overlooking the financial district, a massive digital billboard displaying what appeared to be a public service announcement: Argent Energy, powering humanity's ascension. Embrace the future. Embrace the coming. This Earth had already been compromised, not through invasion, but through infiltration, through corruption disguised as progress. The UAC of this dimension had already begun the process that had doomed Superman's temporary home, opening doorways to hell in the name of scientific advancement and energy production. Hayden took advantage of Superman's momentary distraction, activating some form of teleportation device that moved him instantly back to the portal's edge. "We are already here, Kryptonian. We have been for decades. This Earth welcomed us with open arms, all in the name of progress." Before Superman could respond, a familiar sound cut through the air. The distinctive discharge of a BFG 9000, followed by the screams of demons as they were atomized by its specialized energy. The Doomslayer had arrived, flanked by the human resistance fighters, having secured the main portal and moved to address the secondary breach. Hayden's mechanical body tensed, genuine fear evident in his posture. "The Hellwalker, here, impossible. Our intelligence indicated." His words were cut short as the Slayer opened fire again, the blast catching Hayden directly in the chest. The cybernetic entity staggered backward, systems failing, Argent Energy leaking from the wound like blood. "This changes nothing," Hayden gasped, his voice breaking into static. "Hell comes for all worlds, in time, some through fire and brimstone, others through boardrooms and energy contracts." With those final words, he activated his emergency recall, his damaged form dissolving into particles that were drawn back through the smaller portal before it collapsed in on itself. Superman landed beside the Doomslayer, the contrast between them starker than ever under Earth's sun. The human warrior battle-damaged but unbowed, the Kryptonian restored to his full glory, the S-shield on his chest practically glowing with reflected sunlight. "We have a bigger problem than we thought," Superman said, gesturing toward the UAC logos visible throughout the city. "This Earth is already compromised, not fully corrupted, not yet, but on the path. The UAC exists here, and they're already experimenting with Argent Energy." The Slayer nodded once, having clearly reached the same conclusion. He pointed back toward the direction of the main portal, then made a series of hand gestures that Superman had learned to interpret over their months fighting together. "Close it, return, regroup." "No," Superman said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "I can't leave this Earth to the same fate. Not when I have the power to stop it here, now, before it reaches the point of no return." The Slayer's helmet tilted slightly, the closest thing to an expression the taciturn warrior ever displayed. He gestured again, this time toward the human resistance fighters securing the area, then back toward the portal. His meaning was clear: the mission, their people, the ongoing war. "I know," Superman acknowledged, "and I won't abandon them either. But this..." He looked up at the yellow sun, feeling its energy continuing to purge the Argent corruption from his system. "This is what I was meant to be, what I can be again here. A symbol of hope, not just another soldier in an endless war." For a long moment, the Doomslayer stood motionless, considering. Then, with deliberate movements, he reached up and removed his helmet. It was the first time Superman had seen the human's face clearly since their initial meeting. The features were hardened by countless battles, scarred by wounds that should have been fatal many times over. But the eyes held an intelligence, a humanity that no amount of violence had been able to eradicate. When the Slayer spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, but the words were clear and precise. 2 fronts, 2 champions. He gestured to himself, then to Superman. Hell fears both. The implications were immediate and profound. The Slayer was suggesting a division of their forces, a 2-pronged approach to the war. He would return to Hell's dimension with the Resistance fighters, continuing the battle they had been waging for months. Superman would remain on this Earth, using his restored powers to prevent the corruption from taking root, cutting off Hell's expansion before it could fully begin. "You believe we can win that way?" Superman asked, genuinely curious about the opinion of this human who had fought demons longer than anyone in existence. The Slayer's response was a grim smile that held no humor, only determination. Not win, never win, only fight. Forever. Such a bleak outlook would once have been anathema to everything Superman stood for, the idea that there could be a war without end, an enemy that could never be truly defeated. But his time in Hell had taught him the brutal calculus of survival against cosmic horror. Sometimes victory wasn't about final triumph, but about continuing to stand against the darkness. About ensuring that life and hope endured for one more day, one more year, one more generation. "Then we fight," Superman agreed, extending his hand. "On 2 fronts, for all worlds." The Doomslayer clasped his forearm in a warrior's grip, the pact sealed without further words. Around them, the human resistance fighters secured the failed area, establishing a temporary base around the main portal. Dr. Voss's voice came through their comms, demanding updates, expressing concern over the extended silence. Superman responded, explaining their discovery about this Earth and the strategic decision that had been reached. There was a long pause before Voss replied, her voice carefully controlled. "We'll miss your strength, Cal, but I understand the tactical logic." Another pause. "Just don't forget us. Don't forget what you saw, what you experienced. This Earth needs to be warned about where their path leads." "I won't forget," Superman promised, "and I'll make sure they understand the cost of their bargain with Argent Energy, whatever it takes." The next hours were a flurry of activity as resources and intelligence were exchanged. The Resistance fighters would return to Hell's dimension with samples of this Earth's technology, information that might prove valuable in their ongoing war. Superman would remain with a minimal support package, enough to establish secure communications between dimensions and monitor for further incursions. As the time for departure approached, Superman stood with the Doomslayer at the edge of the main portal. Words seemed inadequate for the bond forged between them in Hell's crucible, yet something needed to be said. "When I first arrived in your dimension, I thought I was trapped in a nightmare," Superman admitted. "I couldn't understand a world of such unrelenting darkness, or a man who had devoted himself entirely to violence, even against evil." The Slayer listened in silence, at his helmet back in place, once again the implacable warrior. "But I've come to understand," Superman continued. "Sometimes the darkness requires not just light to oppose it, but fire to burn it away. You taught me that there are evils in this universe that cannot be redeemed, only destroyed. It's a lesson I'll carry with me, even as I return to being the symbol of hope this world needs." The Slayer reached out, placing a gauntleted hand on the S-shield emblazoned on Superman's chest, a gesture of recognition, of respect. Then he turned and walked toward the portal without looking back, the human resistance fighters falling in behind him. One by one they passed through the dimensional breach, returning to the endless war that had become their existence. Dr. Voss was the last to enter. She paused at the threshold, looking back at Superman with a mixture of emotions playing across her face. "Save this world, Kal-El," she said simply. "Don't let it become ours." Then she too was gone, the portal collapsing behind her with a final pulse of Argent energy. Superman stood alone in the quiet park, the sounds of the city continuing around him, its citizens still unaware of how close they had come to damnation. Above, the yellow sun shone down, filling him with clean power, washing away the last traces of hell's corruption. His time in that nightmare dimension had changed him, marked him in ways both physical and spiritual. But the core of who he was remained, strengthened perhaps, tempered by fire, but still dedicated to the protection of life, to the preservation of hope. Superman rose into the sky, ascending until the city spread out beneath him like a map. His enhanced vision could pick out the UAC facilities, the hidden Argent processing centers, the corporate headquarters where deals with the devil were being struck in boardrooms by humans who didn't understand the price they would ultimately pay. It would not be an easy fight, not a simple matter of strength against strength, but a complex battle against ignorance, against greed, against the human tendency to reach too far and ask questions too late. A battle that would require Clark Kent the reporter as much as Superman the champion. But as he hovered there, between earth and sky, Superman felt something he had nearly forgotten during his time in Hell's dimension. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survivors clinging to existence, but the profound hope that had always defined him. The belief that tomorrow could be better than today, that darkness could be pushed back, that life would endure and flourish. In Hell, he had learned to fight like the Doomslayer. Here, under the yellow sun, he would remember how to inspire, like Superman. And in doing so, perhaps save not just this earth, but create a foundation for saving all worlds threatened by the encroaching corruption. The war continued. As the Slayer had said, it always would. But now it had two champions fighting on two fronts. Hell would face not only the implacable fury of the Doomslayer in its own dimension, but the incorruptible hope of Superman in the realm of humanity. And somewhere in the spaces between worlds, in the infinite possibilities of the multiverse, a balance began to shift. A cosmic scale tipping, if only slightly, away from damnation and toward salvation. The last son of Krypton soared toward the sun, drawing in its power, preparing for the battle ahead. The nightmare of Hell remained vivid in his memory, but it no longer defined him. He was Superman once more, champion of Earth, beacon of hope, and now, armed with the knowledge of what truly lurked beyond the dimensions, more determined than ever to stand against the darkness. Whatever it took, for as long as it took, forever, if necessary. The fight continued. It always would.